So you're at your points where you're either in college or maybe you're a parent that has a kid with ADHD and they're just struggling in school, or you're struggling in school or in college, and you're really giving up on the idea of possibly maybe college or school is just not for me and I want to just give up. But you maybe think, okay, maybe there might be some other options for ADHD that I can implement as far as maybe skills that have not been taught to me that I can implement. Well, I want to talk about a few things that I have done through college and also medical school that helped with my ADHD. So let's talk about that right after this intro. Welcome back, my optimal mind. I'm going to be talking about today some ADHD skills that really helped me through college and medical school. And I have ADHD and dyslexia, and it was a big challenge going through school with those types of challenges. And specifically, communication, I would say, is probably one of the biggest ones. English was really a difficult one for me, but even when I got into the heavier sciences, it became a challenge, because there were so many different classes that I had to take at once, and it had made it difficult to focus on one, and I got distracted a lot, and my grades started to suffer. It wasn't until I started to really work on my time management skills, but also really dig down even deeper to focus on one thing at a time, and to be able to understand what is that one thing that I need to do to improve in that class. So I kind of want to refer to a book that I absolutely love. It's called The One Thing. And this book is by Gary Keller. And it really kind of goes in depth as far as what is the one thing that you need to be focusing on every day to become an expert in. But I want to kind of apply this to how you can use this in school, especially for us people who have ADHD, or maybe if you're a parent that has a kid with ADHD. This is something that I want to kind of break down. So the very first thing is, what is the one thing that you need to be focusing on? And this could be really, really important for parents with their kids with ADHD. A lot of times we give people with ADHD too many tasks, too many things to do all at once. And what I mean by this is like, go clean up your room, go wash your face, go, do this chore, go do your homework. The list starts building up. The problem with us, especially with people with us like ADHD, we can't focus on multiple things. Now, people think they can be multitaskers. Even people with ADHD think they can be multitaskers. But the truth is, you really can't. Because what happens in the brain when you're juggling two things, let's just say, what happens is that maybe 60% of your focus is on one, and then 40% of focus on the other. So your focus is split. When you do that, what happens is you're not doing good at any of them. And then when you throw a third thing in there, well, one of them gets dropped. It's really just impossible to try to really have 100% focus on a bunch of things. You actually are more efficient with your time if you focus on one thing. So going back to the analogy of when it comes with your kid, and then I'll talk about with college. So with your kid, what you should be doing is saying, okay, especially with homework, break it down for them, because they have several classes. Say, okay, what I want you to do just in these, next 10 minutes or next 30 minutes or next hour is just write your first page of your assignment, or do the first page of your math homework. That's it. Don't give them any other tasks. Don't give them any other thing. That is the one thing you're going to give them. So in college, same thing applies, sort of, because you have probably several classes. So like when I got into medical school, this is where it got really taxing, where I really had to apply this, because I was having we had up to sometimes 8 classes, and we would be in class from 8 in the morning, sometimes late into the night. And we still had to study for those classes, and we had tests and exams all the time for those classes. And that became really difficult. But what I had to do is focus on one class at a time, be 100% focused in class, and really ingrain it, versus thinking all the other classes that I need to do and worrying about, what do I have assignment for this? I had to organize it in a fashion so I didn't have to worry about the other classes. And I had particular days that I only focused on certain classes to really memorize things and be able to focus on that, versus trying to juggle all the different classes and different assignments. Because if my mind was thinking about the other classes, it was hard to focus on that one, and therefore I didn't have my 100% focus on that class to be able to retain the information. So that's what you need to understand, is to focus on one, especially when you're in college or when you're studying multiple things at once. Focus on one thing at a time. Okay. The other thing that you need to kind of really implement is, besides just focusing on the one thing, is what is the one thing to bring it all together? So back like in medical school, when I was having to study, all the different pharmaceuticals, all the different drugs, all the different herbs, and we had to study the drug and herb interactions. We had to study nutrition. We had to study anatomy, physiology. We had to study all the different, pathologies, different types of things that somehow integrated. In fact, they were trying to integrate it. They did the best I can to try and make a sense. But when I would focus on one thing at a time, and then when it was the one thing that I needed to bring it all together to have it all make sense, I would get a big, huge board. Usually it was just, back then I didn't have any money, so instead of a cork board, I didn't buy a cork board. I just got a bunch of cardboard, put it on my wall so I could just pin all my notes and flashcards and bring it all together so I could see it all. And then I would, match things that made sense with my notes and compared them. And so that way it was cluster thinking, those one things to bring it all together. And it made a huge difference, especially for my brain, to bringing it all together. And that's something you could do in college, but that's also something you do in medical school or other advanced school that you're in. But even for your kids, same thing. When they're studying for a test, by bringing it all together, you could use something like that. Or another thing that I like doing is flashcards, not only just going through the flashcards, but putting flashcards in groups. Eventually you can kind of package them together because these certain flashcards maybe make sense together because, I'm just using an example from my experience. Usually there were certain drugs that had similar mechanisms. So I group them into that part, not because they were just all heart medications, but within the heart medications, I would group, these ones have these types of mechanisms because we had to know that kind of stuff. And by doing that, when I thought of those medications, they were grouped together. And so when I was asked hard questions, I was able to answer it more efficiently because I focused more on those groups, one thing, and also bringing it all together. Make sense? Okay. The last thing I would say is that really the one thing that you also need to be doing every day. So what this applies to, especially going back to this book, is what is the one thing, skill set that you need to improve upon in school that you need to be practicing every single day. In fact, he talks about in this book is that they've done research on this where anybody that has become an expert in any field, whether it's a professional athlete, a musician, or any kind of expert in any kind of field, they've noticed that they have spent at least 10,000 hours working, just focusing on that one skill set. Okay. So if you equate that, that would be 4 hours a day, 5 days a week for 10 years to become an expert. So that's a lot of hours. I'm not saying it's going to take you that long to be good at school or not, but let's say for me, it was communication. Or really kind of English was a struggle for me, or reading comprehension was a big struggle for me. So every day I focused on always reading, even when I was young. And I also practiced on communication and tried to improve upon that. I would meet with mentors and teachers to help me through that struggle. But that's something I focused on every day. And I'm still using that every day, is to focus on my communication skills as I get older. So what is that one thing that you struggle in school? So maybe it might be math and you want to become a doctor, you want to become, an engineer, something now that's the other thing is you got to link it to something that you really want. If you don't have the passion there, it's going to be hard to do that one thing every single day. But if your passion is to become an engineer and math is something you struggle and you know that is a skill set that you do need, then that's something you should be working on every day. I would say to block out 2 hours. In the book, it says block out 4 hours, but you can start out with, 2 hours. 2 hours a day to be able to block out that time, that is the skill set you're going to focus every single day. Because when you do that, nothing else matters because you can feel accomplished that you focused on that one thing, and that gets you closer to developing that skill set to become that person that you want to be. Now, it might not be math. It might be, you really want to be good at sales. Okay. Same thing. What is that skill set that you want? And you have to find that passion. And even if it's not part of your job description of where you're working, still do that skill set before you go to work. It's best to do it in the morning because that's where we have willpower. And I'll talk about willpower here to help to be able to use willpower in the best, most efficient way. In some future video, I'll talk about that. But if you are struggling with focus and attention and have ADHD, and you're trying to find a better way to improve your mind, improve your focus, well, I have a free training that goes over my proprietary process. It's called the ED Mindset Formula, of basically how I help people have more of an optimal mind and more focused and sharp mind. And that's in the description below that you can watch that training. And until next time, this is Dr. LeGrand signing out, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.